And our job and responsibility is to make sure that we continue marketing that and continue standing by the purpose, even as headwinds come across.
First, I will start from my left. I know we have questions, but I may add a little bit. So I think it's worth I would like to know, and if you can define from your point of view, what is responsible tourism and how collaboration with the different stakeholders, with the supply chain, can achieve the best practices for responsible and sustainable preservations of the resources you use in your operations.
Sure. First, thank you very much for this opportunity, and thanks to Forbes Middle East for bringing to light this very important topic. So let me first talk about, your question is about responsible tourism and ecotourism. And of course, it's one of the tourism sectors that is very much on the rise, because at the moment, I think that visitors and tourists are looking for places that is aligned with their values. Specifically that we see from the younger generations, we see from the millennials, the Gen Z, that they are very much aware about all of the sustainability aspects, and they are really looking for destinations and places that is very much aligned with that. So in El Gouna, we are very proud of our heritage from a sustainability perspective, and we pride ourselves, and we're very honored to be the first town in the Middle East to receive the Green Town Award from the United Nations. Okay, and that's basically because of all of our sustainability initiatives, whether on the residential side or whether on the touristic side. So at the moment, it's responsible tourism is about defining the experience, or defining the quality and the luxury with the experience that we create versus the product itself. Okay, so it's about basically focusing on creating the memory and what we call understated luxury in many cases. So you see a lot of trends that is on the rise. One of them, for example, is glamping. Okay, and we are very also proud to announce that we will be opening our first glamping in 2024, by mid of 2024. And you see a lot of also other trends on the rise, like earth hotels and other type of trends that is really kind of like putting a lot of the cornerstone for sustainability in tourism in general.
So before I move to Talal, I would like to add a follow-up question. You've talked about everyone, but maybe I misheard. What about the local communities?
Of course.
How you involve them?
So when we create a destination, the first thing that you do, first of all, you need to be in harmony with your nature, with your natural surrounding, as well as engaging with the local communities. Okay. So this is, I think, is very much essential for any sustainable development in general, I would say. And again, if I would say like kind of examples, in El Gouna, we actually are very much engaged with our local communities. We have societies, we have Gouna Nature Conservation Society, where we bring in and engage with all of our local communities, and they do a lot of things like mangrove planting, like marine life preservation. We have our Earth Week. We're also proud to be the first town where we have, and that is also because of our engagement with the community. We have zero plastic bags in Gouna, and the community actually was also demanding us to do things like, rewarding, and we have like these reverse vending machines. So the way I see it, it's basically about awareness and education. It's definitely about rewarding the behavior, and it's about engagement with the community. These are the three factors for you to have a sustainable development.
I have a follow-up question, but I'll give it to Talal. So Talal, I'll add same question, but I'll add another question. With the local community, so what's responsible tourism, collaboration, how you engage local communities and the areas, like you guys fast tracking when it comes to tourism. Local communities, I would like to see an aspect, if you have capacity building training, upskilling and job creation, if you can touch on this as well.
Yeah, sure. Well, it's easier said than do, that's all. You need commitment, and this is something that we have, luckily, in our project. And the easiest thing, or the most beautiful thing about community engagement, if you have this as part of your original value proposition. Mm-hmm. So you don't need to force fit this in the future, where you have maybe financial obligations or financial limitations. If you have this as part of your original value proposition and plan, and part of your offering, then it will be much easier. Mm-hmm. In Diriyah, it's a destination that is built in Riyadh. The concept of this destination is to offer a gathering site that is basically inspired by heritage and culture. So how we can do that without actually engaging the community? We need the community so we can actually learn about our history. We need the community to provide authentic experience to the people. Because if the people want to come and enjoy an authentic experience, it has to be provided by the community. Yeah. So it's much easier for now, because now we need the community to be with us. Mm. We're inviting the community to be with us. And
do you have any pushback?
No, there's no pushback, but what we require to do is to upskill them, to train them. Yes. And this is required. Everyone is excited and interested that there's a huge development happening there. We need to train them. We need to give incentives. And this is what we're doing right now. So on the side of training, we have scholarship programs, we have training programs. Now currently in the company itself, in the authority itself, we have 80% out of locals and 13% of the particular community that we're in are part of our society. We have an entrepreneurship incubation program because we want to encourage that as well. Because the whole concept is to preserve history and to preserve culture and to show culture and history. So we're glad and we're lucky that the value proposition of our project is actually inspired by the community. And if we don't have community, we'll fail in our offering. So this is why I think it's much easier for us. And we already started that.
So if I may ask, you created, when you talked about engaging local communities, I really like what you did with, if I'm not mistaken, the Formula E, the platform, the engaging. So did you think getting such innovations engage the local community? You know, the Saudi culture, they're into like the motor sport and having this, did this accelerate engaging at least the younger generation? You talked about the glamping, and Guna is a great platform for sports and outdoor. Did you think looking at laser, like focused on what the communities got, accelerated their engagement and collaboration?
Yes, absolutely. The community, they're willing to do a lot of things, to be honest. The first of all, you need to read and understand your community needs and to train them. I think at the beginning what we did is to define a number of areas where we can get the community as soon as possible. There are a number of areas that they might require a huge training and a long training programs. For example, event management. That was something that didn't exist actually in Saudi for the last 40 years. We just started our events since the vision. So yes, some of it might require longer times. Hospitality, for example. Some of the cultural downstreams where we didn't have, for example, theater, some of the music elements. So yes, we started training programs. However, that doesn't stop you from getting the community in specific areas that you can do immediately. For example, tour guiding. Now with our sites that are open right now, the tour guides are all from the community. They're all Saudis and from the community. You can easily train them and give them the proper training and on-the-job training, and they can be immediately engaged as soon as possible, yes.
Perfect. So same, responsible business, collaboration, engaging local communities.
You know, I think to start off with, at the forefront of our inception, especially of the Al-Antara brand, the first thing we said as a cornerstone, which now has become such a relevant story to what you're saying, was literally indigenous sustainable luxury. You cannot be sustainable if you don't go indigenous. I can tell you that. We've learned that lesson along the way. And I think more and more as the communities are evolving and technology is coming in and we're starting to see more focus on sustainability, people are starting to realize going local has a bigger impact than going global. In particular, in tourism development, when it goes from everything from funding, planning, project building, and all the way through to operating an asset. And I think for us, we've really realized how much more we can learn and sustain our business long term if we go local. And we use local materials, we understand how the local engagements are there. And for us, really, this has been the cornerstone of what we've done. But I think what's important to understand as well is when you then involve the local communities, it is also taking some of the old know-hows. I think we've moved so fast into the technological advancements of learning what comes up, sometimes we forget to learn from the past.
Right.
I can give you an example. We have a lovely resort in the empty quarter here called Casa Al Sarab, one of our properties. And that property, we were redeveloping the whole project. We developed a cultural center called Espa. We call it turning the desert green. But we were struggling with water. We went back, we looked back at what the Bedouin people were doing. They had an old falage system where they would minimize any form of wastage of water. We looked at it from the wind tunnels and how they could look at how they could preserve cold air and make sure that then you can use that across the line. But then take that in with solar power, which we then incorporated in, so that was sort of the old meets the new.
Absolutely.
And it's really, a lot of that we learned from the local community because they gave us an insight into how their forefathers was doing it, incorporate that with Schneider and some of the newer technological advancements in industries and build that together. Then suddenly you start seeing both the old meets new and pull that into what the future will look like. So for us, engagement into the local community has been at the forefront of what we do, but I think giving back is even more important. To be sustainable is not only bringing in and incorporating that in from a tourism perspective and from our guests and consumers, but also making sure that how can you really support these communities from a geosystem. Hospitality has probably one of the largest footprints when it comes to supply chain.
Yes.
And that supply chain, when you look at building, it's very important to look at how can you source locally, how can you support building of factories and manufacturing domestically as well. And that for me is very important. I'll give you an example. Again, I'm throwing a few examples out there. I was in India last week and we're doing a lot of progress there. And India is one of the most diverse and vast countries in the world from all aspects, right? And I was staying in one of the renowned hotels, I will not mention the name, and they were proudly mentioning importing marbles from Italy. They had the amenities and the bottles and shampoos imported from California.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at them saying, well, and at the same time they had a sustainability tag on the front. I mean, yes, we don't use plastic straws, yes, we don't do plastic bottles. But I said, that's really such a minor component of it. But if you look at the footprint that marble has taken, when in Rajasthan you have some of the best marbles in the world, when you have some of the best produce, flora and fauna, to produce some of the best amenities domestically, why are you not supporting them? And then you're not only then looking at the job force that you're hiring, but you're looking at the local community and upskilling and creating new jobs that's going to support the eco and the tourism. And from a storytelling and from a consumer perspective and from an employee and employer perspective, that's where the impact is lying. It's really, are you having a sense of purpose beyond yourself? And what are you giving back to the community and reversing that cycle?
I really like it, and I'll give an experience as a customer. So and maybe you can share it with everyone here.
Yes.
So I guess you can tell I'm a customer of yours.
I hope.
But what I liked about you do is how you engage, and I'm sure Mohammed, you do it, you can touch upon it because I know you do that. You have resident scientists in some of the resorts, depends on the location. So if you're in a marine country, by the beach or the sea, you get someone who works with the next door villages.
Yes.
To study the fauna and the flora. So I think Dr. Lamia would like this. I don't know if you become a mini platform for R&D. Do you want to talk, this is how you engage, do you want to talk more about this?
You see, the first thing we do as part of a project development, and that's actually to your point, we don't focus on our hotel, we focus on the domestic community. Because we've been, historically, our job has been destination creators. Because we've been in very unique places, like empty quarters, like in Tuzur and other parts. And I think for us, the first step is, we call it the domestic guru. So we have guru, what we call them.
Yes.
And it's going and engaging with the local communities and understanding what can we bring from them in, and how can we incorporate them as part of the experience. One of the simplest things, which is one of the most popular, is what we call the spice spoons, which is a cooking lesson, so the cooking class. So what we do is, for instance, just to put an example, in the north of Thailand, a place like Golden Triangle, the locals go in and we actually support the local markets and the local farmers, and the guests love it. They go, they become part of that local village experience, they learn what are the produce available, and through that then we incorporate a cooking class and an experience as well. So it's not a artificially created, which many do when they go and they do a little souvenir center in the hotel. It's really incorporating the local community and again making it sustainable, because you let them also create a business out of it.
But it makes perfect business sense.
Exactly.
Yes. So Jonathan, thank you so much, by the way, on behalf of all the customers.
Thank you.
You reintroduced a lot of attractions.
Yes.
So again, what's responsible? I think, as in the energy sector, we have that trilemma. I'm sure you have your own. So how you can, what's responsible tourism for you, for sure? Local communities, especially when you introduce and reintroduce new things, and I know the local communities are the heart of everything you do.
Yes.
How you upskill them, how you engage them in your operations to ensure that people have the same experience, they have it here as they have it somewhere in the US.
Okay, so I'm also one of your guests.
Oh, thank you.
I think the leisure, entertainment and tourism industry here has made great strides in the recent past when it comes to sustainability and environmental initiatives, particularly at Mural. That's one of our core objectives, and it's inherent in our design and development mandate. We've also just recently released our CSR strategy and framework, which is currently being implemented. And I can use an example from that, really associated with the environmental pillar, which we've implemented with our partner SeaWorld Parks and Resorts from the US through our recently developed SeaWorld Park on Yas Island. Within that park, we've got the Yas SeaWorld Research and Rescue Center. And there are a number of different initiatives and pillars that we have established there. We have the Rescue, Rehabilitation and Return Center. We've also got a research component to that. And through that, we have outreach programs with the community. We've got educational outreach programs with universities and educational institutions. And we organize outreach programs such as beach cleanups with the local community, which is focused on the local marine environment. So we're trying to build that awareness. It's a new initiative. It's only been in process for the last probably 12 months. But it's all about building awareness within the community and good, sustainable environmental practice.
So to be fair, again, I put my marine hat, and if you think about, and Mohammed, I'm sure you have it in Al-Guna and in Egypt, when you talk about Red Sea, be it in Saudi or Egypt, you guys are gurus on that. But I think in this part of the world, thanks to responsible tourism, be it, we have now the main centers in between Dubai and Abu Dhabi. We have a hotline, turtle hotline, by the way.
Yes.
Most of the time I'm in the sea. I know whom to call when I bump into an exhausted hawksbill turtle 24/7. And this is where, again, back to the point, what responsible tourism is. And I see some of the sustainability practitioners here. You're doing a sustainable job. You're doing what you do best, but also you're doing it responsibly, and that's important. Now, Mohammed, when it comes to tourism, and the questions for the four of you, by the way. Now, people say 40% of energy is buildings, architecture. Same with water. Yeah. You produce a lot of waste, right? So, you talked about I know you're advanced, but how sustainable built environment or architecture and Diriyah is an amazing architecture place. I've never been to Al-Guna new resort. Promise I will. I go liveaboards in the Red Sea. But how can this create a competitive advantage? At the end of the day, it's a huge competition there. And you talked about Gen Z. They have access to information. They compare. there is financial competitiveness, but how can being responsible built environment, the customer experience can create a competitive advantage?
In development, it's not just, and I completely agree, it's not just the moral responsible thing to do, but it does create an important competitive advantage. I think one of my colleagues here mentioned about looking at the past when it comes to development and when it comes to techniques that you can use that can actually boost your sustainability efforts. And one of the things, and when you go and kind of like drive through or even better fly over Guna, you would see like it has a very unique type of character and a very specific DNA. And even though that you have like 42 different districts, but all of them kind of like have more or less the same characters. And you see some of these characters actually adopts many of the techniques from the past. So you see, the Nubian style of building that actually helps quite a lot when it comes to energy saving and when it comes to better ventilation. You would see the concept of wind catchers, which is again an old type of basically, again, helps for the better ventilation and better energy consumption. We would just launched one of our very new project that is using ground earth. So, which is again a very old type of techniques where you put layers of earth and you ram it for you to be doing building, and it's permeable, so it actually allows better circulation. So all of these kind of like, I would say, development techniques, we are not just, it doesn't just give you, it's not just a matter of sustainable as a responsible thing, but actually our customers, specifically as you go more international, as you are becoming more, and Guna is a very much of an international destination. We have more than 50 plus nationalities that live there, that reside there. I have 25,000 residents there. So it's a full year-round, complete, fully integrated town. So it doesn't just, again, not the responsible thing, but it actually creates quite a bit of a competitive advantage. And the customers are willing to pay this premium, are actually very much willing, and we see that from demand and from research, by the way.
For the experience, or because sustainable is more luxury, maybe?
Because luxury is redefined.
Okay, nice.
That's it.
So it's just, I don't want to say sustainability is the new
really
luxury,
like this answer.
but
I'm gonna question luxury is being defined by sustainability. that will be mine.
Let's put it this way.
Thank you, Mohammed. Talal.
I think we're doing, when you say sustainable tourism, we're doing from scratch real estate development. Those are real estate development projects. What you need is to reduce the impact on environment and reduce the impact on people, be it the community or the visitors. And we've heard Mohammed and Amir learning from the past. Imagine that the entire project of Diriyah is to learn from the past.
Yes.
And we were learning from the past just to copy some of at the beginning is just to see the urban framework and the urban fabric and see how we can actually create a master plan that is inspired by the past. And the more that we dig in the past, we see a lot of practices that actually drive sustainability. So irrigation systems, for example.
Yes.
Cooling systems.
Yes.
Now we're building, the entire Diriyah is being built out of mud bricks. And that so we have a factory. We are using materials from the earth to produce. Now we have produced more than 8 million mud bricks to be used for the entire development. So on the master plan, I think the more we learn from the past, the more we will be sustainable. We saw a lot of technologies that will sustain the project on longer terms, that will save an operational cost. That's an advantage, by the way, and will help in providing authentic experiences. We're telling the people that this is an authentic experience, and those buildings are not built of typical materials.
Absolutely.
This is built out of mud. So on the master plan, we were lucky to receive a LEED certificate on our master plan from the Green Building, the US Green Building Society. And also one of our projects got the gold pre-certificate from sites. So we're going through that path. When it comes to the construction materials, it's important to be sustainable. We are looking at the negative carbon concrete how we can do that. But not only this, you need to maintain sustainability as you go with the operations. So this is where I think smart technologies can be used in order to do that, with efficiency, with recycle, with water recycling. I think the use of technology is important.
Absolutely, and I see it, the kingdom is, when it comes to real estate, built environment projects, you really redefine. And when you were talking about it, I had a flashback of learning from the past, and we had a discussion. When you think circular economy, when anyone ask me how you define circular economy, I say, think of your grandmother. She never threw anything. So, which is exactly, and I look at the projects in the kingdom, it really redefines the raya. You're absolutely right. You have the Neoms of the world, you have the edges of the world, and you have the Dir'iyas and the Gunas of the world. So I'm fully aligned on that.
And there's a message. When you learn from the past is as progressive as any new project. It's sustainable. For example, with the climate, we know that in summer it might be hot in Riyadh. It is hot in Riyadh. However, when we saw the traditional framework, the urban framework, and the traditional city framework, there are ways of building the corridors, for example, where you can generate wind and you can generate cool.
Yeah.
So by just implementing that in our master plan, we were able to reduce the heat without using any technology and without using any power.
Saving money.
Yes.
Yes. we deserve that. Amir, in your hotels, how you do it?
And I'm going to challenge a bit the norm here, because obviously we're blessed with two gentlemen who are in charge of major master plans.
How you can beat that?
No, because when you're doing a master plan, there are certain privileges that comes with it, because you're redefining ground up.
Yeah.
When you have existing, that's where the challenge lies.
Yes.
And it's really how can you take repurposing existing infrastructures and existing developments, and how can you make them green? And I think that's the challenge we face in a lot of more mature cities. And Dubai I would consider more of a mature city now in comparative as well. And to put an example, a very simple thing. We took a property in downtown last year. Concrete jungle.
Downtown Dubai.
Downtown Dubai,
okay.
Sorry.
So just
tons of buildings, concrete jungle. And the first thing we did, and we're launching now the new lobby development, we focused on everything on green walls, vertical gardens, and making sure we implement as much as possible greenery back in. The fact that it actually cools down temperatures, it helps you with drive oxygen flow, alone just the spirit and the mind, just looking at it from a holistic wellness perspective, the impact it makes. That project now, when we're going live, we're going to be also looking at phase 2, adding a hydroponic garden and basically producing and reusing everything within that location. In an area where you have concrete everywhere, that's the type of models we need to look at as well. How can we retrofit existing buildings where you have the vertical facades and make sure we maximize the usage of that? That's the first project we're doing in downtown. We're sort of setting the precedence that you can still do a pleasure resort, urban resort in the middle of a concrete jungle. Sorry?
When is it going to open?
We're launching now the phase 1 of the lobby actually this week.
Oh, bravo.
Tomorrow, Friday. I'll invite you, don't worry. I think we have a lot of advocates. I'll invite everyone. Yeah, so that's going to be an example of a prototype of how can you take a city center hotel and turn it green.
Nice.
The other element is, really use of technology. In our Anantara Palm, we put a heavy weight into sustainability. We looked at stuff like a simple thing, food digester. Just a food digester alone, we've produced over 200 ton of grey water that we use for irrigation and fertilizing a year, just by taking your food waste and extracting the
maybe
water.
Compost as a side.
And we compost, of course, and we have a digester that makes sure that all the water is extracted. A simple process most people don't do. We're now, through technology, measuring landfill. So we have now, this year alone, we've had over 250 ton reduction of landfill. And that's basically through just looking at what can be reduced, you reduce, stuff like plastic and other things. What can be repurposed, you repurpose, such as coffee capsules.
Yes.
We brought in local artistries and we're repurposing that, and we're selling this jewelry and passing it on as charities. So it's again looking at every single component of footprint that you take in an existing infrastructure and repurposing and reusing that. So there's so many technological advancements there.
This is amazing. You just gave me, people should know about these things, People should know what Al Guna, Dir'iyah, Anantara they're doing, because it's back to the previous panel. I think we're making it business sense, but we're not maybe talking about it much as we should. But Jonathan, how you do it? You have big structures, right?
Yeah, so I think maybe If we take Etihad Arena as an
Yes.
example on Yas Island at Yas Bay, I didn't have any history to draw on or any existing infrastructure, so that was curated from scratch. But we started with sustainable principles in mind. It looks as if it was architecturally driven. It was quite a beautiful structure, but actually we were considering the U values and the heat gain from the exterior when we were developing that, let's call it a high-performance shroud. So that actually generates about, I don't know, 50% above the Ashrai baseline, and it reduces our draw on energy whilst maintaining a cool environment inside for our guests. Thinking further ahead, the arena has very high peaks and troughs when it comes to energy usage. So we developed an ice thermal cooling system, which reduces, its performance is probably about 20% in excess of
in-house?
Yes, so it sits adjacent to the arena, and its performance efficiency is probably 20% greater than it would be using traditional plant. We've got other examples as well within the arena. We've got automated faucets for water usage. It reduces the water usage in the arena for around about 30% per annum. Things like that. We thought about that in advance. Yes, it was the first multi-purpose arena developed in Abu Dhabi of its size and scale, but there are more and more options for guests now. So I think maybe we need to push our credentials a little bit more so people become more aware. And I think this was thought about quite some time ago. The building itself actually won the Sustainable Design of the Year award in 2018. So this is going back some time before the ecological and sustainable principles started to come to the fore.
I really like it. I love it when I hear solutions, practical, pragmatic solutions that are implemented not by me, but not by a sustainability guy, by the business people. It means you feel, one, you really believe in it, you're passionate about it, and it makes business sense, which makes a lot of sense. So I have a last question, but I think it's fair to open questions for the audience. I'll have one question. So whoever raises his hand or her hand first will take the floor. If not, I'll ask the question. So do I see? Sorry, the light is on. No one? Going once? So I can, okay. It seems you guys been doing a great job there. So
either that or the opposite.
Okay, I have a follow-up question now. So my follow-up, I have actually comments to wrap up, but before I wrap up, I have a follow-up question. There's, when it comes to your industry, we talk about responsible business.
Yeah.
Let's be pragmatic. Some people think they are compromising in luxury. And Muhammad, you just opened the door. You said we're redefining luxury. And I love it. But how this will impact, you talked now, when it comes to energy, definitely I agree with you. I'm a civil engineer. I think you can prove it in your balance sheets. But how being responsible will impact your investment as a luxury, your investment sheets and investment asks from be it your board or externally. And the second part, you talked about Gen Z, but also some people believe luxury is to come up there you abuse everything they have in the hotel or all the lights on. How can you meet that dilemma? How you can satisfy this kind of customers but also have access to investment? By the way, we did not
a multi-layered question, I would say. No, but it's a very interesting question because I think at the end of the day, what makes luxury is the demand. What makes luxury is the actual that there is this type of demand in the market. And I think that at the moment, regardless of millennials and Gen Z, the general awareness about sustainability is definitely out there. So I think that even in like my generation and older generation, I don't think this concept kind of like exists. And if it does exist, probably it's our responsibility to educate and make even the client aware. Because at the end of the day, it's like everything else, like smoking. If you don't find places to smoke, then you will probably think twice before smoking and things like that. So I think that this is probably what we really need to be doing in order to preserve or to, let's call it, redefine luxury.
Making it the norm.
Making it the norm, redefine luxury, but also do good business, because without having the balance sheet and the P&L proper, the business is not sustainable. So it has to make business sense at the end of the day. Otherwise, honestly, it's going to be short-lived no matter what. And there is a lot of different sustainability initiatives that are not economic, and accordingly, they are not adopted. So, and until it becomes economic, like a lot of things, like electric cars have been, there a long time ago. But the moment it became economic, now it's becoming, a trend. And I think in our industry, it's exactly the same thing. There's a lot of technique, there is a lot of technologies, green tech technologies, a lot of things, but they're not at a maturity level enough for us to be able to adopt it and in the same time sustain from a business standpoint. Because it doesn't make sense that I just adopt sustainability initiatives and I go bankrupt at the end of the day. So it's...
I like your answer, Mohammed. Making it the norm. So you come up, I'm going to quote you for two things: redefining luxury. My ad part would be using sustainability, but making it the norm. I completely. Talal.
Because usually people say luxury is excess, luxury is waste, luxury is surplus. I don't think
that's the misconception. You don't have
that's the misconception. I think luxury and sustainability can coexist. It's a journey. It's an evolution journey. As Mohammed said, you can define what luxury is for your customers and for your visitors. That's important. And I think as everyone, you're a good example. Because of the type of segment or the customers that you're targeting, they are becoming more aware, they're becoming more responsible. They can actually spend an extra amount, and they can make choices where they see that it is sustainable.
Sure.
And you're responsible. So we're seeing that the percentage of those people they're adding. I just read an article in the States. They said it's 68%. I'm not quite sure about the source, but we're seeing that percentage of people who can make responsible choices is increasing, and this is economically good. I think it's an evolution.
Yes.
And redefining luxury is very important. I think we should be able to influence and tell our story of what luxury is, especially for the new generation. And the big players should play a role. Now we're seeing hotel operators, they're doing that. But I think the downstream business in the supply chain needs to adopt more of that. And hopefully by having the big players doing that, they will influence the entire supply chain.
Yes.
I think what helps us, and we started this journey with headwind for the good part of 15, 20 years before the market started adopting it. And we invested heavily ourselves because we believed in it that much. But I think what's happening now, the evolution is even in the lending markets, right? If you want to borrow money for developments, one of the first things that comes on your plate, what is your ESG targets? What are the impacts you're giving? And what are you doing back for community? So those are now helping for us as developers to look at it from that perspective. Say, well, if you want to build up on that, then you need to show initiatives and you need to show commitments. And technology has helped us to start showing track record.
So this helps you to have access to capital.
Absolutely. We've just launched a 500 million euro sustainability loan, which is built around redeveloping sustainability across both our existing portfolio and new development. This type of access wasn't there back in the day. So that's a big impact. I think from us, when we look at it from that aspect, and you look at sustainability as part of the core piece of your business, you need to really look at, again, it's the full cycle. Back in the day, it's an educational, it's storytelling. Back in the day, luxury was you need to have every option available on a culinary platter when you go to a hotel or a restaurant. Nowadays, the best Michelin restaurants are seasonal. They only give you produce from within the location they're at. And the storytelling around that is that this is all within a radius of 5 kilometers of where you're dining. And that's the type of story that makes a difference. And our job and responsibility is to make sure that we continue marketing that and continue standing by the purpose, even as headwinds come across. And the biggest element we see now is not only the Gen Zs and the millennials, but the Gen Alpha. I'm focusing on the next generation already. The Gen Alpha that's coming up, which will be our consumer and our employers and employees for the next 10 years from now, they're the key because they've already had all this journey built up from birth, and they've gone through COVID. They've understand the power of supply chain, going local, experiential travel, going to the beaches and valuing the turtles and the divings and the sites. And now you have to just focus on them and make sure they understand the impact that they can make in the future. And that for us is a bigger impact now, to focus on that generation moving forward.
Very well said. Thank you. Yeah. Jonathan.
I think what Talal was saying is right. I think investment and sustainability can coexist. But you can't do it by yourself. You can't do it alone. It requires stakeholder buy-in. It requires collaborative partnerships. And I can give an example. We've recently entered into an arrangement with Emerge, which is a JV between Total Energy and Masdar, for the implementation of various solar fields within our theme parks. And I think what we're trying to do there is provide a sustainable story that sits alongside the storyline of the park, and that immersive experience that we're trying to provide for our guests. We've implemented a 36,000 square meter solar field on the roof of Warner Brothers, and that's generated up to now about 5 million kilowatt hours of electricity, which is about 40% of the annual usage for the park. So it's out there, people are aware of it, and I think it helps drive interest in coming to our more sustainable destinations.
So I'm really glad that I think ESG and responsible tourism and sustainable, like be it in built environment or like when it comes to your industry, the fact that you have access to capital, bankers are looking at you as part of the solution, yet you have access to capital. I think it makes a lot of life easier. But again, before I wrap up, and thank you on behalf of everyone, while you were talking, by the way, I was thinking on a personal level. So when I was a repetitive customer, okay, technically when you were speaking, by the way, you were just giving me guidelines for sustainable tourism. And I discovered that most of the places I've been repetitive to, the customer experience were all responsible industry. So does it make sense? Yes. But that's a personal level. And I used to write notes. Now I saw the CSO network, which I chair, by the way, on behalf of the region, and I saw the PI and I see Forbes. I think one of the action points from this today is it will be great if we can have a platform to talk about solutions and sharing knowledge.
Yes.
The issue is, do we prove we have access to capital? Yes. Do we have responsible generation? That's genius, by the way. I'm future-proofing my industry. You're trying to future-proof yours. So I think one of the outcomes, hopefully, I would like to see from this panel is, and I don't see the colleagues there to make them, but I'll volunteer them anyway, is to come up with a platform or a publication that shares best practice from the region and have access, like open source, responsible tourism case studies. And I'm sure, like listening to you today, you were outspoken, you were vocal about it, you were there sharing best practices, technically not being selfish about it.
Absolutely.
When I talked about definitely you're not competitive when it comes to sustainability, so it definitely unites you. So thank you so much on behalf of everyone here. It's
thank
been
you very much.
Personally
Thank you.
Very insightful, so thank you for your time here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.